Hi there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. So great to be along with you today. This AutoPen story is huge. We cannot let it rest because what was happening with the AutoPen is Joe Biden's minions. Well, Joe Biden was actually the minion. Joe Biden's puppeteers were running a shadow government. From legislation to pardons, was there the possibility that staffers were selling clemency deals, just using an AutoPen, a machine, to basically fake Joe Biden's signature and sign off on things to run the country. So now we had a guy who literally cognitively inept, asleep at the wheel, carrying the nuclear football with the nuclear codes, while all the while you had young staffers that were running the entire show. And they had his signature to do it. And that, of course, was the AutoPen. We're told there were multiple signatures needed to sign off on these AutoPen deals and move the AutoPen from where it was stored. I'm going to name names today of who I believe was responsible for the use of the AutoPen. What they did with that AutoPen is unconscionable. I believe it was a coup against the United States. There's no way Joe Biden knew what was going on. So we'll get to the point of naming names, and we'll go through the ultimate ramifications of all of this. And then, of course, there's this big, beautiful bill. We're getting closer and closer to a deal. And apparently with the SALT tax, state and local taxes, the level has been increased. I'm going to tell you why I'm actually okay with this. It may surprise you. A lot of my Freedom Caucus friends are not. We'll talk about all that today as Stinchfield continues here. But before we do that, I want to tell you about my friends over at Colonial Metals. You know, before you tune out, ask yourself, why is China now dumping bonds? Okay? Grabbing prime American farmland, rolling out new digital currency. I hate doom talk as much as you do, folks, but it's pretty clear. Communist China is plotting a financial Pearl Harbor right now to pull the plug on the U.S. dollar and devastate your IRA and 401k. President Trump's a genius, though, because he's letting retirement savers, like all of you, protect your life savings with gold 100% tax-free. And when you call the trustworthy experts at Colonial Metals, you know you're going to be in good hands. 800-458-7356, or just go to freegoldguide.com/grant, freegoldguide.com/grant. Get your free Gold to Guide 2025 version. Bulletproof your wealth with gold. Plus, you could get up to $7,500 in free silver. freegoldguide.com/grant. Pay them a visit today. All right, let's get the show started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, so great to be along with you. So as I was saying, this AutoPen situation is, well, folks, about as bad as it gets. Joe Biden, the walls are crumbling in, and it seems like this is what happens once things start to fall. Everything starts to fall like dominoes. Now we're seeing more and more what is who was really behind all of it. So do you want me to name names on this? I will. These are the 5 people that I believe were running the Oval Office over Joe Biden's 4 years. You had Jeff Zients. You may remember a O'Keefe Media Group investigation where they had a whistleblower saying Zients was really in charge. Then there's Ron Klain, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Bruce Reed, and Annie Tomasini. These 5 people were either chief of staff or deputy chief of staff inside the Oval Office over the last 4 years of Biden's presidency. I believe these are the ones that had the keys to the AutoPen. They were the ones that were using it. Now, the allegations of what they could have done, we need to find evidence to see whether or not they did it or not, is nothing short of stunning. There were something like upwards of 2,500 clemency granted, pardons, clemency granted in one day. There's no way Joe Biden sat there and signed all of those. Who was in them? Do you think Joe Biden read every one of those files? I doubt it. This could null and void all of those things. So again, when the walls start to crumble, they really start to crumble. This is James Comer on with Jason Chaffetz on Fox. Comer is the head of the Oversight Committee, and they are looking hard, fast and furious, into this AutoPen scandal.
You are going and looking at who is controlling this AutoPen, because Joe Biden, I mean, he's demonstrating that he doesn't have all the cognitive capabilities they had. That interview was from 2023.
Yeah, that's hard evidence. Early in the President Biden's term as president, it clearly shows that he was in significant mental decline. It questions who was actually making the decisions. So what we found is not just with the pardons he issued, but many of the executive orders that the courts are now using to Trump-proof, many of the executive orders that President Trump is trying to implement to make government more efficient, many of these executive orders, as well as the pardons of Biden's entire family as a result of our investigation, these were all signed with the AutoPen. And clearly from that interview, which was many, many months prior to the heavy use of the AutoPen, Joe Biden wasn't capable of making decisions. He wasn't coherent. We think we've identified who the staffers are. Jason, you all have done great work with that over at Heritage Oversight. We're going to bring everyone that we believe was involved in any role in the use of the AutoPen. We're going to invite them to come in for a transcribed interview. If they want, then they will receive a subpoena and they will have a full-blown deposition. But we want to find out who was actually making the decisions in the White House during the last 9 months of the Biden administration when he was clearly in mental decline.
So I think it goes beyond the last 9 months. There's no doubt in my mind that it goes beyond the last 9 months. And so I want those people interviewed. And here's where it will fall apart for Joe Biden. And probably Jill Biden, who may have been one of the orchestrators of all of this, working with Barack Obama. You will have people start to roll. You will have people start to make deals. Because if what I believe is true, and we need the evidence to prove it, I believe criminal actions were committed. I believe they signed things in the name of Joe Biden, the president of the United States, the chief executive of the greatest nation on earth. They signed things in his name without his knowledge or understanding of what was being signed. The AutoPen ought to be thrown in the dumpster. There should be no use of the AutoPen. I'm told by my friends inside the White House that President Trump doesn't use the AutoPen, that President Trump signs everything himself, all the pardons, legislation, executive orders, all signed by himself. What if we go back further in the Biden presidency and find out that many of these executive orders were not signed by him? You know, I believe it was Jim Jordan who tells the story. Speaker Johnson tells the story of going in and being alone with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden saying that he never signed an order to stop the exportation of liquefied natural gas. Speaker Johnson says, hey, Louisiana is my state. You shut it down. There is no, Biden says it's just a study. Biden clearly didn't know the order he signed was a ban on the exportation of liquefied natural gas. To me, that's frightening that we had a president so out of control, so sidelined by people, I think, with very, very ill intentions. This is President Trump.
Biden, look, it's a very sad thing what happened, but I believe we're going to start looking into this whole thing with who signed this legislation. Who signed legislation opening our border? I don't think he knew. I said there's nobody that would want an open border. Nobody. And now I find out that it wasn't him. He AutoPenned it. Who was operating the AutoPen? This is a very serious thing. We had a president that didn't sign anything. He AutoPenned almost everything. He opened the borders of the United States of America. And I kept saying, who would do such a thing? Allowing criminals to pour in from all over the world, not just South America, all over the world. They came in from Africa. They came in from Asia. They came from the Congo. The prisons in the Congo in Africa, these are rough people. The prisons from the Congo are empty. You know where they are? They're in this country. Who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country. And the AutoPen signed it. And they didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the AutoPen. And they use the AutoPen and everything.
This is why you need people who are executives in positions of leadership, okay? So if you're a United States congressman, you're really not in a position of leader. Are you a leader of the nation? Kind of. But what you really are in Congress are a follower. In some respects, you got to follow what your constituents want. You got to follow what leadership wants in Congress. There's very few members of Congress that lead by example and stick to their principles. It's basically a follow the leader organization. As president, you have to be a leader. Now think about Joe Biden. Joe Biden came up through Congress and the United States Senate. He was basically told what to do. He never had to make decisions that affected large amounts of people like you do as president or the CEO of a company or as a governor of a state. These are the types of people, CEOs, governors, that I want leading the United States of America. President Trump's the prime example of why you want a successful CEO, because they can make decisions. Joe Biden was used to being dragged around, told what to do, told where to go, told what to sign, because he was a follower. And all he really wanted was power. So he was doing what he would do whatever he could for that power. Now, who was pulling the strings? I couldn't help but pull this. Remember this?
I said this before. People would ask me, knowing what you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what? If I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony. Wow.
Folks, what do you think? I mean, they can't keep their mouths shut, right? This is what the Democrats do. They always spill the beans. It's why they make awful criminals. Think about it. Joe Biden was an awful criminal. The Biden crime family, they exposed themselves every step of the way. I mean, Hunter and the laptop and the emails and the deals, and Joe Biden going over to Ukraine and saying, fire the prosecutor. I won't give you the money. My son works for Burisma. Just throw it all out there to see. That's what Barack Obama did. He just literally threw it out there for the world to see. Now, what could also be behind the AutoPen? You think it's a money-making scheme? You think they profited off of this? We know that this has been done, that in other nations, they were selling clemency deals. Was the Biden administration selling clemency deals? My question would be, were any of these people selling clemency deals? They could just pull the AutoPen out of the closet, sign off on it. Next thing you know, charge somebody $100,000. You're free, let out of jail. Done deal, no big deal. I don't know. Maybe. Very, very scary, to say the least. All right, what could be done? The idea of selling clemencies is very, very real. There's a United States congressman who's a great friend of mine that offered that up. I'm going to play that clip for you here in just a moment. But before I do, let me tell you about my friends over at get20now.com. You know that data centers are all the rage right now in the investment world. We know that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is. What if I told you combine those two for an investment opportunity where you're going to get 20% on your investment, annualized interest paid monthly, okay? I have invested a sizable amount with the folks at get20now.com. They are industrializing the Bitcoin mining industry. And they are using technology now like I've never seen before. They're using water to cool the boards. They're recycling the heat to somehow turn that into a cooling mechanism, because this is all about giant power in these warehouses. The folks over at get20now.com are on the cutting edge of this, which is why they can pay you an annualized interest rate of 20% paid monthly on your investment, direct deposit, cash flow. If you want more information about this, go to get20now.com. That's get20now.com. Again, they have lived up to every promise they have made for me. Every investment has a risk, but this one has been working out great for me. Get20now.com. That's get20now.com. Pay them a visit. Tell them Grant sent you. Make sure you call them back when they send you an email or try to reach out to you by phone. You're not going to want to miss their phone call, I promise you. All right. I told you I would play you my friend Congressman Burchett, who was talking about what they might do with the AutoPen, what they could use it for. Listen.
Able to take forms, get them, and run them through some sort of bogus legal system, and then they auto-penned them. And there's probably people out on the street that shouldn't be, but somebody got rich off that. And wow. And I think those people, I hate to say it, but you'll see something probably horrible happen to some of those people because it goes up the chain. This is a very dangerous town to play games in.
So you're saying that the Biden staffers took payouts and just ran the AutoPen for certain pardons.
I have no direct proof of that, but I'm just talking about history. And if you got somebody making $100,000 a year and somebody offers you $250,000 in some safety deposit box. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Look at all those. Look at Clinton's clemency, Bill Clinton, the people he gave clemency to. Some of those people were just awful, awful people. And nobody raised a beat about them.
Yeah. I personally know people who paid millions to try and get Trump to pardon them. Very rich guys who are in prison for good reasons. And they go through these Republican lobbyists to try and get it done. It's a huge industry.
So that's interesting, Benny. Did they get it done? I doubt it. I don't think President Trump's going to take money to pardon people. I do think the Clintons would, and I certainly think the Biden family would. You could add in, I put this crew here of those, either the chief of staff or deputy chief of staff in the Oval Office, but there's somebody else you got to put up on this list. You got to put Jill Biden on that list. Was Jill Biden selling the pardons and clemencies? Or did she dispatch Hunter to go sell them? Who knows? And then just have the AutoPen do it in case Joe Biden would overrule it. I doubt he would have. But think about what Tim Burchett said, the congressman from Tennessee. A safety deposit box with $250,000 in it. I grossly underestimated the clemency deal. $100,000, I said. $250,000. Benny Johnson says $1 million. I guess if you're wildly wealthy and you're in prison, why wouldn't you pay $1 million to get out? Of course you would. Somebody would take it. I think that's what the AutoPen, there's a good chance that's what the AutoPen was all about. Now, who discovered the AutoPen? That was the Oversight Project over at the Heritage Foundation. And they came on the program last night to talk about this problem and why it needs to be not just uncovered, but why we cannot let this issue go. And this may be the one spot where we get accountability from the criminal acts of the Biden administration. All right, you guys are the ones that uncovered this AutoPen situation. It's got to make you somewhat happy. It's starting to come back around to the news, and I think the reason it is maybe as oversight and judiciary start to look at this issue, I don't know, you think we may get some accountability, at least on this case?
Oh, I definitely think we will. And, we've never gone away from this issue. We started it, but we've kept on it. And I can't get into confidential deliberations, but suffice it to say, we talk to a lot of people and we're familiar where other entities are going, and we're happy to help anyone who wants our help get to the bottom of this, because we've really only begun our work on this. It's an ongoing project. And once we made the initial discovery, our reaction was we have to unpack this whole thing because it's just not right. It's wrong.
Do you think you guys know who the staffers are behind the AutoPen? And did Joe Biden have any idea what was being signed in his name?
I mean, look, I think we can speculate on President Biden. I certainly don't think he was aware of everything that was being signed in his name. And I'll say this on the staffers. The AutoPen is kept in the office of the staff secretary normally and is tightly controlled. There is a memorandum issued by all administrations that authorizes certain individuals to use the AutoPen and certain individuals only. Whoever was on that memorandum are the individuals that I think Chairman Comer is looking at, and there may be some others that we come to who had that authorization, but it should start with that memo. That memo will say exactly who could move, that is to say, use the AutoPen, and from there, you unpack it.
All right, so does that memo say that Joe Biden has to give the approval, or they just had free will to sign anything in Joe Biden's name?
I mean, let's be honest here. I think they probably had free will. There was supposed to be approval, but I don't think that was happening.
I don't either. And that's what makes it a crime. And so here's what you're going to have to prove, and this is what's going to be difficult. You're going to have to prove that Joe Biden didn't know these actions were being taken, that nobody ran it by him. Okay? Now, could Joe Biden, could he have signed something that gave Ron Klain, the chief of staff, the ability to make the decision when to use the AutoPen for him, almost like giving him power of attorney? I think the Constitution bars that from happening because specifically when it comes to legislation, doesn't say this about pardons or clemency, but when it comes to legislation, the president shall sign it into law. The president shall sign it. Doesn't say a machine shall sign it. Doesn't say the president shall give authority to his chief of staff to use a machine to sign it. It says the president shall sign it. And I don't think that was happening. I really don't. So to prove that Joe Biden didn't know, because what are you going to do? You're going to bring Joe Biden in. You're going to ask him, did you know about this executive order? Did you know? They've now ruined his credibility. Maybe the ruining of Joe Biden's credibility through his cognitive decline is by design by those that were exploiting the AutoPen. So anything he says, and I can't remember, is believable or, quote, not believable by whoever they're interviewing, meaning there's no credibility left from Joe Biden because he's mentally incapacitated. Maybe all of that is by design. All right, now they've leaked all the audio tapes. They've got everything. Nobody's going to believe anything Joe Biden says. That protects the people who are using the AutoPen from Joe Biden saying, I don't remember signing that. Well, Joe Biden doesn't remember what he had for lunch the same day. So it doesn't really mean anything under oath. That could be what's at play here. Anyway, they've got to get to the bottom of it one last time because we'll see if we see these faces pop back up along the way. Jeff Zients, Ron Klain, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Bruce Reed, Annie Tomasini. If they pop back up, it's not going to be good for them. They were the 5 people running the Oval Office at any given time in between the 4 years that Joe Biden occupied it. And let's face it, that's all he did. He occupied it. He was not the president. There was a shadow government in place pulling his strings. No doubt about it. All right. Who may become the next president of the United States? I'm here to tell you the idea that President Trump is going to somehow run for a 3rd term. It's not happening. I know you wish it would happen. I know there's a lot of people out there exploiting this idea and making you think it might happen. I'm here to tell you I would bet the farm not happening. So even though I'd love for him to run a 3rd term, I would love it, but it's not happening. So who would be next in line? Clearly, J.D. Vance is on that list. But there's a gentleman, I'm going to play some clips from him, that his stock is rising with every performance that he gives in front of the United States Congress or in front of media cameras. This guy is impressing me more than I've ever been impressed from him before. And I'm talking about Secretary of State Marco Rubio. You have J.D. Vance, who's a young guy, Marco Rubio, a young guy. The performance of Marco Rubio, if anybody's upset about it, it's probably J.D. Vance, because he says, oh, my Lord, this guy's stock is rising when it comes to a run for the presidency. If I was J.D. Vance, I would go to Marco Rubio and I'd make him a deal. I'd say, hey, little Marco, as President Trump used to call him, let's team up now. Don't run in 2028. Join by ticket, Vance, Rubio, and what a ticket that would be. I mean, seriously. And then what? Marco Rubio is a young guy. He'd be primed to take over again. So you're looking at 12 years from now. I don't know how old Marco Rubio is. Let me see if I can find out. If anybody knows, you can put it in the chat. He's 53 years old, so he's 3 years younger than me. He looks young. So 53, 60, so he'd be 65 when it's his term. That's actually fine. He probably doesn't want to wait 12 years, but boy, the get in line starts early, doesn't it? And remember, he ran for president like 8 years ago. Well, no, more than that. Yeah, eight years ago, 10 years ago, I guess it was. So he'd be great. All right, I'm going to play you clips from Marco Rubio. But before I do that, let me remind you about my friends over at EnergizedHealth.com. I feel like I'm in the greatest shape of my life because I am hydrated at a cellular level. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks on the Energized Health protocol. This system is amazing. There's individual coaching. There's daily videos they'll send you. There's weekly Zoom calls. There's the guidebooks. There's personal coaching. There's the website. There's everything you need to succeed. Recipes, all kinds of things. Nutritional supplements if you need it, but this is not a supplement diet or program by any means. This is about a mind, body, soul program to take back your life, lose massive amounts of body fat if that's what you need, or like me, 15 pounds to tighten it up. And so it's been working great for me. And I love the Energized Health folks. I love the program. I'm telling you, it would do you well. If you got to lose 200 pounds, you just got to tighten it up 10 or 15. Get with Energized Health. EnergizedHealth.com. It's imperative you tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. EnergizedHealth.com. That's EnergizedHealth.com. I promise you. I look pretty good for 56, right? Somebody tell me I do. Look at that. Look at that right there. I guess it's pretty good. Thanks to EnergizedHealth.com. Tell them Grant sent you. All right. Marco Rubio. Wow, man. I mean, nothing short of wow.
In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker.
Including the one you had a margarita with, he says. So he's talking to that Senator Van Hollen, who really is just a little wuss bag leftist. He's the one that had the margarita with that Venezuelan sent to El Salvador, the gang member MS-13, and I'll let Marco Rubio continue.
And that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear in the days to come.
Mr.
You're
Chairman,
going to see who you went to
look,
defend.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated
Senator,
comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You
Secretary
had your
Rubio
time.
should take that testimony to the federal court
Senator,
of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge and the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy.
No, they can't. But that's what the judicial branch is trying to do, and the Supreme Court, in some respects, has thrown that out, saying you can't expect them to control foreign policy. A court can't do that. That is of the executive branch, which Marco Rubio is part of. All right, he's appointed by President Trump. So this Supreme Court ruling that says, hey, the temporary protected status of 350,000 Venezuelans that came to the United States can be lifted by President Trump. It's the equivalent of somebody comes in your house. You invite them in for Christmas dinner. You have the right to kick them out when the party's over. Okay? This is the same thing as with a country. We invite you in. we have the right to kick you out. Unless, of course, you're an American citizen. And then you're here to stay whether we like it or not. But if you commit crimes, we can throw you in prison, something Democrats are always very hesitant to do when it comes to keeping Americans safe. So Marco Rubio has a point. Well, this interaction between Van Hollen and Rubio continued.
And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
May I respond?
You may sit.
Well, first of all, your regret for voting for me confirms I'm doing a good job based on what I know.
Well, that's just
your
a
record
flippant
and what you
statement,
stand
Mr.
for.
Secretary.
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
I didn't ask
Senator,
questions.
please let the Secretary have
I'd be
the floor.
happy to, but then I can respond to his.
Your time's up, Senator, and willfully used, I might add.
Well-
your remarks do not represent the view of this committee.
Well, Mr.
Secretary, please.
Well, I'd like to. I can't respond to everything he said because much of these are untrue.
You used your time woefully, I might add, he says. Oh, that's greatness. All right, here's Marco.
I'll go through a few. First of all, I'm actually very proud of the work we've done with USAID. For example, I don't regret cutting $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique. I don't know how that makes us stronger and more prosperous as a nation.
I
don't regret
Sudan,
psychosocial support services.
I raised
USAID.
Sudan, Mr. Secretary.
Can I
not
respond, Mr.
Mozambique.
Chairman, or do I?
Senator, I'd ask you to suspend. You had 7 straight minutes of
I chose to
railing on-
use my time that way, Mr. Chairman. That's my right to
Please
use my
suspend,
time that way.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, I can go on. I mean, there's other things here. We spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members.
Hold on one second before we get to that. He's going through the list of some of the crazy shit that they spent at USAID. And they spent on a lot of crazy shit. Now, circumcised men in whether it's Mozambique or wherever he says it is. The point is, we don't need to be spending money on circumcisions of foreigners. The point is, USAID, a.k.a. the American taxpayer, doesn't need to be spending money on a Big Cat YouTube channel. Now, I would ask, why aren't these things being cut from the budget now? So if Elon Musk finds $1 billion of waste at the Department of Education, why isn't $1 billion taken off of their budget right off the bat? That's not what's happening in this budget negotiation. We're going to get into the budget negotiations in a little bit, but I'll let Senator Rubio talk about the El Salvadorian gang members.
Gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come,
Mr.
you're
Chairman,
going to see who you went to
Senator,
defend.
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary
No.
Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated
Senator,
comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor. You had
Secretary
your time.
Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the
Senator,
United States because
well,
he hasn't done it under oath.
Here's another point, okay? There is a division in our government between the federal branch and the judicial branch. No judge in the judicial branch cannot tell me or the president how to conduct foreign policy. No judge can tell me how I have to outreach to a foreign partner or what I need to say to them. And if I do reach that foreign partner and talk to them, I have under no obligation to share that with the judiciary branch. Just like a judge cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister of Russia, they cannot order me to negotiate with a foreign minister or the president of El Salvador. And if I did negotiate with them, which we have responded to them, and we've told them we've had communications with the president of El Salvador, I am under no obligation under our division of powers in this country and to share with the judicial branch how I conducted diplomacy of the United States. It would actually be counterproductive. If I started sharing with courts, or frankly, with the media, my conversations with foreign leaders and all of their details, no foreign leader would talk to me again, and we would break trust with them. So I have complied with every court order. What I won't comply with is an order to disclose what I'm saying and what we're talking about with a foreign leader, because then they won't talk to me. Diplomacy doesn't work that way. About the student visas, let me say this. I don't deport anybody, and I don't snatch anybody. The State Department does not have officers in the street snatching everybody. What I do is revoke visas, and it's very simple. A visa is not a right. It is a privilege. People apply for student visas to come into the United States and study. And if you tell me that you're coming to the United States to lead campus crusades, to take over libraries and try to burn down buildings and acts of violence, we're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what Ms. Ostork did?
We're not going to give you a visa.
Is that what she did? Come
that,
on, Mr. Secretary.
And every single
You're
one
just
of these
blowing
cases, the
smoke
factors
here
are
now.
different.
Senator,
the bottom line is if you're
Senator,
coming here to stir up trouble on our campuses, we will deny you a visa. And if you
Does
have
the
a
First
visa
Amendment
and we find
apply
you,
to
we'll
people
revoke
living
it.
in the United States?
And we're going to do more. There are more coming. We're going to continue to revoke the visas of people who are here as guests and are disrupting our higher education facilities. People are paying money. These kids pay money to go to school, and they have to walk through a
Writing
bunch
an
of
op-ed
lunatics
to the
who are
tough
here on student
newspapers
visas.
disrupting the
Simple
foreign
as
policy of the United
I want to
States?
do more. I hope we can
That's
find more of these people.
pathetic, Mr.
In fact, the other day, some guys led a riot. I forgot what university it was, and I asked, please, can you find the arrest records of all the people that were arrested at that riot at that campus? Because if any of them have a visa, we're going to revoke it.
I feel so much.
Great interaction. And what a great job by Marco Rubio. A guy who, by the way, I think could easily be president. I guess in some respects, he's fourth in line, I think, is the succession to Secretary of State. Anyway, God forbid we would need to get down to fourth in line. But Marco Rubio is fabulous here. And so everything he went through lays out the case of what President Trump is doing by putting America first. And let me say this about this idea that Democrats say, well, what, these illegal aliens don't have rights? They most certainly do have rights. So we are granted certain inalienable rights, meaning they are handed down from us for our creator. You don't have to be a citizen of the United States to have a right to free speech. Every person in Venezuela and Russia and China and North Korea has a right to free speech. They aren't granted that right in those countries. So these illegal aliens most certainly have a right to free speech. But what he forgets is we don't have to grant them access to the United States. They don't give up their rights. Other governments don't respect them or acknowledge those rights. But we don't have to allow them to practice it here if we don't want them here. They're not citizens of the United States. We can control who comes and who doesn't. We can decide we're not letting you come here because you are inciting violence, because you are repeating terrorist, jihadist rhetoric, whatever it may be. The commander-in-chief, the executive branch, can make the decision we're not letting you into this country. Doesn't take away their rights. It only means they can't exercise those rights here. You're going to have to go do it someplace else. One more from Rubio.
But I'm going to ask you, what? Yeah. So a well-justified fear of persecution?
Yeah, they thought that their farms were being burned down and they would be killed.
All right, so this is about bringing in the South Africans. And today, President Trump is meeting with the president of South Africa. The left wants to call President Trump a racist because we had white farmers being raped, pillaged, farms burned down, land stolen, some of them murdered, and he gave them asylum here. A group of what, less than 50?
I think that's a pretty good justification for wanting to come. They're afraid for their lives.
And should it be applied in an even-handed way? That's an easy.
No, our foreign policy doesn't require even-handedness. It requires prioritizing the interests of the United States.
The phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No, you're not entitled.
So
you're
can
allowed.
you have a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently you are, because you don't like the fact that they're white, and that's why they're coming.
I'm just asking you to say that would be unacceptable.
Well, no,
that
I would say that the United States,
a very easy thing
the United States has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United States.
Even based on the color of somebody's skin.
No one's. You're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These
you're
are people whose farms were being burned down and they were killed because of the color of their skin.
Well,
Well, you've demonstrated enough because you think anyone should be allowed into this country for any reason because they met a certain criteria.
Who has said that?
We are going to prioritize people that come into our country on the basis of what's in the interest of this country. That's a small number of people that are coming.
But you said this weekend that
but
there
in other
would be more.
cases, it's harder to vet. In other cases, it's more difficult. And by the way, the United States admits people every year.
Yeah. This is like arguing with a robot who's been programmed Democrat talking points. I feel bad for Marco Rubio, but man, oh man, what a fabulous job that he did up there, right? I mean, getting it done. So RFK Jr. also getting it done. And this gets into the idea of the budget talks, okay? Because where we're spending money seems to be ridiculous in the big scheme of things. And we continue to add to these agencies' budgets without any regard for what are we spending the money on. There's a topic or a theory called zero-based budgeting. Means every year your agency or your division starts with a budget of zero. You have to come to the boss and prove why that budget should be increased. Explain it. You don't start with last year's budget and then automatically get a 3, 4, 5% increase because of inflation and you just get more money. That's lunacy. That's throwing money out the window, especially with the waste, fraud, and abuse we've seen. Listen to RFK Jr.
You can.
And I also want to point out.
I have just 2 minutes left. I asked you.
Hold on. This is not the one I want to play. I want to play this one.
So your total budget for 2024, I think, was around 1.7 trillion. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we've had a 10% increase across that. We've received nothing in return.
We've had a 38% increase in 4 years.
And at the
with
same
nothing in return.
And nothing
you can
in return. And we have our.
Think about this, folks. A 38% increase in the budget in 4 years and nothing in return. People haven't gotten healthier. We haven't stopped disease. We haven't cured cancer. We haven't done any of these things with Health and Human Services. Yet the budget increased 38%. So where was all that money going? Well, we know it was going to pet projects of these deep staters.
My Democrat colleagues that are complaining about cutting spending. At the same time, we have NIH recipients, because we've heard our colleagues on the left side really complain about you cutting NIH funding because they call it research. But is it really research? I mean, let me just throw some numbers out here for you. Harvard received $488 million in NIH, and 69% went to indirect cost, meaning didn't go to research. Yale received $646 million, and 67.5% of their NIH money went to indirect costs, meaning didn't go to research. You had Johns Hopkins University got $858 million. 67.5% went to indirect costs, meaning 67.5% of $858 million did not go to research. University of California, San Francisco received $815 million in NIH money, and 59% went to indirect cost. But I'm sure there's no room to cut NIH money for research. I mean, who would think we probably have room for that? Because let's just use the top 4 recipients for my colleagues and on the Democrat side. Let's just use their numbers and round numbers. That's $2,807 million in NIH money for top 4 universities receiving NIH. Out of that, $1,684 million went to indirect cost. I'm using rough numbers here. Now, I'm sure there's no room to cut NIH research, right?
There's room to cut the research both through the indirect cost, which the total cost was $9 billion last year in indirect research. So that's $9 billion that did not go to research. But
so this indirect costs they're talking about, the numbers start to ho-hum you because we're so used to throwing around trillions and billions. I mean, we used to throw around those numbers like manhole covers, meaning you couldn't throw them around. They didn't really exist. Billions, maybe, certainly not trillions. Now we're throwing around trillions as if they were billions, as if billions were once millions. And these indirect costs is overhead. It's administration. It's office space. It's entertainment. It's everything you can imagine, private jet travel, all these things that we shouldn't be spending money on. A large portion of the quote research budget going to that instead of actually paying scientists to research something.
So
$9 billion that went to other things like flowers at the university.
Right, and the way we don't know what it goes to.
The presidency,
and the way it works is if we give $1 million grant and there's a 60% indirect cost. That means they get to keep the $1 million grant, but we have to give them another $600,000 for their indirect costs. So that's the way it works. And
wait a second, hold on. What? You hear what he just said? You get $1 million grant. You think you got $1 million, but they tell you there's a $600,000 indirect cost. So the government now has to pay you $1.6 million. So in essence, you got $1.6 million grant. Why are we doing it that way? Why aren't you just applying for a certain amount of money? Explain to me what you're going to use the money for, and then we approve it or not approve it. Not, here's $1 million we need for research, and oh, by the way, we got $600,000 in administrative costs, and now we need 1.6. How about one application? The grant money probably is going in as $1 million. And then they're looking back at these indirect costs as some other line item in the budget. This is absolute lunacy the more you dig into it.
Private universities that have the big endowments like you were referring to, they're the ones that get the most inflated numbers. Let me just say this. We have 9 separate offices for women's health. We have 8 separate offices for minority health. We have 20 separate HIV programs. We have 59 separate behavioral programs. We have 40 separate opioid programs. We have 42 maternal health programs. Each one of them have their own administrators. We have 100 communications offices when I came in. We have 41 chief.
Say 100 communication offices?
Yes, 100, and we have 1,400 external affair officers, staff.
1,400 external affairs officers. Those are media people. When was the last time you saw anybody from HHS talking to the media? Never. What are they doing?
We have 40 procurement departments using 4 different contracting systems. We have 9 resource officers, dozens of IT departments, and 8 senior finance officials. And what we're trying to do is eliminate the redundancy. There's no way to govern this agency. This agency has a budget that is comparable to the 6th largest nation in the world. And we have no governance because these are all in silos with their own infrastructure, and we're trying to consolidate them, and that's why they don't work. That's why we throw more and more money every year, and Americans are the sickest people in the world. We spend 2 to 3 times for health care what other nations spend, and we have the worst outcomes on earth. And if somebody does not reorganize this mess, it is going to continue. And we're trying to do it, and we're going to make some mistakes as we do it. But ultimately, I can tell you 4 years from now, the American people are going to be a lot healthier.
Well, I hope so. I mean, look, in the goal, HHS should be a healthy America. Not a bankrupt America, not an obese America. Neither one. I think you can do both. Be fiscally responsible with our money and work us getting into a healthy direction. He's trying to do it with all the things with food dyes and all kinds of additives to certain things with the fluoride. I don't know how I feel about the fluoride, by the way. Maybe we need to do a show on fluoride at some point. All right. Let me get in. There's one more from RFK Jr. Where is it? Where is it? Over here. Let me try to get it here. Here it is. This is the one that I was going to play you. I mean, this is where he's classic and he just lets Democrats have it.
I also want to point out.
I have just 2 minutes left. I asked you a specific
I want to point out something, Senator. You've presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people.
Well,
our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously.
Because you have not done your job.
Seriously. That is an
What have you done about it? What have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Mr. Secretary,
what have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Seriously, Madam
Secretary,
Chairman.
I would ask it to hold back and let the Senator ask the questions.
Mr. Secretary, I'm asking you a question.
Yeah. What have you done about chronic disease? Nothing. 32 years in office, America got sicker and sicker and sicker. Senator Murray is a clown.
You
Look
can-
at her, by the
also
way.
want the
This
health
this
of the
this.
American-
Let me just show you.
Mr.
This look again. Remember, I go back to what liberals look like. That's what liberals look like. Okay, you tell me who you want running the country. Somebody who looks like that, or somebody who looks like that. RFK Jr.'s put together. He's in good shape. And then this one, look at that. My Lord. Or you get somebody that looks like this without the glasses. Oh, boy. I really got dressed up for the podcast today. I got my Dallas Cowboys shirt on after I did a little spin class on the Peloton. Trying to keep in shape for the fight, though. That is what I am trying to do. All right, folks, have you heard that if you feel bloated or you're tired, brain fog, do you know this could be parasites? No joke about this. The parasites are a real freaking deal, man. Check this out from this doctor. The wellness company, twc.health/grant, has a parasite cleanse that has been sold out 3 times. Finally back on the market. And I, for all of you, Stinchfield's Army, we have access to it. I don't know how long stock is going to last. Ivermectin, mebendazole. But this is one of the doctors talking about it.
The main differences between ivermectin and fenbendazole. These are 2 anti-pathogens used to treat parasitic infections and other similar types of conditions. They are used quite often in the oncology world to treat cancer. They both have as anti-pathogenic abilities.
Yes, look at this. Parasites thrive in the U.S. despite what many Americans think. There is worms, parasites in your salmon from the grocery store. You can get it from drinking water. So I'm doing this parasite cleanse. I started it about 4 days ago. I don't know. I already feel like it's making a difference. I really do. My bloat is going down. This is this ivermectin, mebendazole combination. It is the gold standard in parasite cleanses from, of course, the wellness company. twc.health/grant. Use the promo code GRANT. You fill out that medical intake form, send it back. They'll get with you. Folks, I mean it. If you think there's even a chance that you or family members are infected with parasites, 80 million Americans maybe, you ought to get one of these parasite cleanses. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. All right, so the budget battle is unfolding. It looks like Republicans have struck a deal on this SALT tax, state and local taxes. Many of my fiscal conservative friends say, you know what? We shouldn't raise the SALT tax because we're rewarding blue states for their high tax structure. Now, I can tell you, I live in a red state that has a high tax structure when it comes to property taxes. I live in Texas. My property taxes were well over the $10,000 limit. It appears they have reached a $40,000 SALT tax deduction agreement. I actually am okay with this. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I want to fight for lower taxes everywhere, even if you're an idiot about it. So, Gavin Newsom, I'm going to give your people of California a little bit of a break. They may hate me. They may hate me for it. But maybe if we give them a break, they'll start to see our ways are better than theirs. So I understand we want to punish Gavin Newsom and the Democrats running California and the Democrats running New York. But what about the everyday people? I will always fight for lower taxes and increasing the credits that you can take, or excuse me, the deduction you can take for paying local and state property taxes, to me makes sense. Why should I pay a government once and then have to pay another government and not be able to deduct that from my income? To me, that doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's fair. But again, this gets back to all politics or selfish politics. I'm being selfish about it because I pay well over the cap right now. I will pay well under the cap when it goes up to 40 grand, and it looks like it is going to. Abe Hamaday went on with my buddy Joe Pags talking about this big, beautiful bill and where it's headed.
It has to be a standalone thing if you wanted to do no tax on Social Security.
Right.
So giving people, individuals making $75,000 or less.
All right, so he's talking here about Social Security. So President Trump's President Trump's promises were no tax on overtime, no tax on tips. It looks like that's going to be in the bill. The Social Security was an issue because it had to do with budgeting, so that has to be a separate bill. So instead of doing a separate bill, what they're saying is not that you will still pay your tax on your Social Security, but you will get a tax credit of $4,000. So you'll pay the tax, but then you'll get a credit of $4,000 if you're of this age, and it will offset the no tax on Social Security. Does that make sense?
So we're on Social Security, or couples making $150,000 or less on Social Security are getting like a $4,000 tax credit. That's a lot of money. That's pretty good. So it's not no tax on Social Security, but it is what you're able to do in reconciliation where you only need 51, right?
That's exactly right, Joe. So it's in effect the same, has the same outcome, just through a different maneuver. So I give a lot of credit to Chairman Jason Smith on the House Ways and Means Committee for being creative on that.
But here's the problem. So why only people making under $75,000 a year? Why not everybody? I mean, if you're not going to tax Social Security, we paid into it. We paid taxes on that money, paying into it. Why are we paying taxes on Social Security? So why would you give that $4,000 tax credit to everyone, no matter how much money they make? As long as they're collecting Social Security, they should get that credit. I know a lot of my friends, they're blessed, but either are collecting a pension because they work for a big company, they're collecting Social Security, they make more than $75,000 as an individual. Why shouldn't they get the benefit? But again, this is me arguing for low taxes across the board for everybody. I don't want to hammer the rich, hammer the poor. I don't want to hammer anybody. I want everybody to get relief.
And hopefully going forward in the future, we're eventually going to eliminate tax on Social Security because, these people are already paying taxes into Social Security, and yet they're getting taxed on the back end as well.
Makes no sense.
But reconciliation, this big, beautiful bill, we have to understand it's going to, some people, some of the softer Republicans are opposed to it because of the SALT tax credits, but there's others of the Medicaid. So it's a balancing act. And Speaker Johnson actually has a tough job, but he's been doing a great job working with President Trump to whip up the votes. And when not everybody's happy, that usually means that's a pretty good bill. And I think that's what Republicans have to understand, that when this is going to the floor on Thursday, we all have to support it because President Trump needs this victory. If not, we know how the liberal media is going to react to it. And we just have to make sure that we're producing the good piece of legislation to send to the Senate, because the Senate, believe me, they won't have the same type of reforms like that we have on the House. We're a lot more aggressive because we're the House that's closest to the people. The Senate has a lot of different interest groups going to them all the time.
All right, so we hope they get it all worked out in the end, right? I mean, I want this bill to go through. I want some real meaningful spending cuts. Push it as far as we can push it to the point where it can't go anymore. And then no matter where you are as a Republican, you got to vote for it. That's what we need to do. And the only man that could get this grace is, of course, President Trump. I don't know if I would have ever given anybody else this kind of grace, but what this man has done for this country, where he is bringing this country, the ideas he has to move this country forward, we've got to give him the leeway and the launch pad to do it. There's not a president on earth that I would have made these compromises to other than President Trump. And I think the other Republicans who are possibly no's ought to agree on that very prospect. All right, folks. That today is going to do it for us. I appreciate you all watching. It's always a great pleasure having you with me. Real America's Voice Show tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to tune in on Real America's Voice, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, as I said. And Stinchfield 1776 on all the platforms. If you're watching on Rumble, Facebook, Getter, Twitter, X, wherever you are, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please follow. All of those things help get our message out. God bless every one of you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. We'll see you soon.